Speedrunning is a very hot topic to some people. There are those who think that speedrunning the game means cutting out the enjoyment of the content, and then there are those who understand the truth.
If you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about?
All jokes aside, speedrunning is something I've always been interested in, at least to a small degree. It started for me quite a few years back, running those old Call of Duty training levels where you have to make your way through the pit, and a lot of us would try to beat the developer times. The first time I took it a little bit more seriously, though, was when I picked up Celeste. I was so excited about playing my first real speedrunner game that after I played through the first level, I started practicing it for a couple of hours, just so I could actually post a time on speedrun.com. I was so excited that I was able to officially call myself a speedrunner. Now, granted, it was a terrible time, it was a terrible run. I didn't know any of the tech, it was just me going as fast as I could until I was happy with the time. But I got there and it was a great moment for me. Unfortunately, I didn't feel that same sense of gratification for a long time. Even playing Ghost Runner, a relatively popular speedrun game, I felt like the levels were really too long to make it an enjoyable speedrun experience. But then, in November of 2023, I was gifted a copy of Neon White. Unfortunately, I didn't really play it for about a month, but once I did, I instantly fell in love. The optimizations, the short levels, the cringe but fun story, it was just this perfect recipe. I started with trying to beat my friends' times, then I got a dev medal on accident, so I decided I needed to get all of those, and then I got the Neon Light mod and started grinding for community medals designed to give the game a little bit more replayability for the veterans. The community was extremely welcoming, giving me so much advice and helping me find where I was making mistakes. And I do want to give a special shout out to 10N, who on very many occasions would send just a single message about what I was doing wrong, and I would instantly throw a time close to, if not faster than his own on the leaderboard. He's also the one who recommended the game I actually came to talk about today, and for that, I'm very grateful.
Welcome to your Motivator Orientation.
Stop Dead is a speedrunning game. It's very similar to Neon White in that it encourages you to always be going faster, but it ends things there by taking it to a whole new level. You're forced to always be moving. If you stand still for even a moment, you die. Now, the game isn't unmerciful. You do get a brief time frame where if you stop moving, you can start moving again, but at the cost of having taken some damage. The game is currently in early access, which is something I usually don't particularly like. However, even though the game is in an incomplete state and is still having levels added, holy hell, this game is fun. The mechanics and movement are all there, and the number of bugs I've run into is actually very small. The worst bug I've really seen, I was able to report it to the devs and even got an explanation of why they think it happened. Having a dev team that is active and connecting to their community is such an amazing thing that so many gamers will never get to experience. Now, to be clear, this wasn't some typical customer service rep. This was one of the two main developers from a team of less than 5 people who have brought this game to life. The game uses mechanics like sliding, bunny hopping, wall climbing, and what is honestly feels like a very unique aiming style when it comes to the gunplay. Bullets don't seem to go exactly where you're aiming them, but rather, because you're moving so fast, you kind of need to learn where you should be aiming. Thankfully, most levels are very short, at least once you learn how to move fast. And the soundtrack, I don't even know what to call it, except maybe industrial synth music. All I know is it fits the feeling of the game perfectly. Within an hour, I felt like I was a top-level speedrunner, despite barely cracking top 20 on a lot of the levels. A few of the levels were a cakewalk, but the game definitely keeps things spicy and ramps up in difficult considerably. A couple of levels definitely did get frustrating, but only to the point that it felt so much better once I conquered them. Long story short, this game has it all. Pounding soundtrack, great movement mechanics that will punish the inexperienced but reward those who put the time in, fun level design that gives multiple route options, and a leaderboard for you to compare to all the other players out there. Now, I do have some pros and cons about the game, and while it's unfair to talk about the cons of an unfinished game, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice by not speaking about them. That being said, many things can still change before the game makes its full official release, so take everything with a grain of salt. Also, I may draw some comparisons to other games here and there, but don't let that be any indicator of a game being better or worse than another. These games all have their own experiences to offer, and in most cases, I highly recommend them. So if I ever make a comparison, it's just for anecdotal evidence and is in no way putting me down another game. So for the pros, starting right off the bat, there are few games that have made me feel so comfortable with speed so quickly. There are games I've played that have tried to do so, like Ultra Kill, but in my opinion, they lack a certain something that just makes them feel a little bit less friendly for maintaining the level of speed I find myself able to achieve in Stop Dead. Then you also have games like Neon White, where it's rare that you ever reach those points of breakneck speed that just make you feel completely awesome in its own way. Both Ultra Kill and Neon White are amazing games, and you should definitely play them, but Stop Dead definitely offered me something I hadn't experienced anywhere else before. Another pro is just the little things that this game has to offer. These little things are just these extra pieces of spice and flavor, and it just makes everything so much better. You've got small Easter eggs, lengthy but cool Easter eggs, I'm looking at you, office level. More alternative route options than I've ever seen in a game, but especially the little bell when you hit a perfect bunny hop. As you chain perfect hops together, this bell hits every time, and it changes pitch in such a satisfying way, it makes the dopamine tickle your brain. It brings you up, and then when you lose that flow and stop moving, it slams you down in a way that makes you feel like a crack addict. And it's amazing. Another pro is this really cool feature. Now, something I've thought about how cool it would be to have in a game is the ability to run against the ghost of other players. I believe there's been other games with it, and there's even been talk about it as a mod for Neon White, but I personally haven't seen it in another game. Stop Dead offers it natively, and it's so simple to set up. At the end of a level, you just find the leaderboard listing for someone you want to compete against, click Start Racing, and the next time you load in, you'll see the ghost of another player, showing you their route and their pace. Having that type of support natively ready to go in-game is so cool, and you can even customize your own ghost for how other players see it. Now, the last pro I'll talk about is the replayability. Yes, there's replayability in going for a better time. However, the devs actually took things a step further by adding a point-based scoring system as well. So when you finish a level, it gives you a breakdown of your points and assigns you a letter grade that you can strive to improve. Most importantly though, it actually shows two different leaderboards. The top leaderboard is for time, which is arguably what most people compete with, but the bottom leaderboard is for points. So now, you can actually compete for both time and score separately, which almost always have to be different routes, since you'll usually find items that can get you extra points if you're willing to step off the beaten path. Having a system like this that incentivizes you to really explore things you may not often see is amazing. A good example is Neon White. So many runners, myself included, have never even seen some parts of maps because there are times where a shortcut route is so obvious we've never even attempted the intended route. I've been forced into taking some of those routes on occasion, and this was after over 100 hours of play, mind you, and it just kind of made me step back and realize, wow, I've never been here before. Now, I'm not saying that's never going to happen in Stop Dead. In fact, some of the levels are so much bigger and have so much more to explore, there's a real chance it'll happen more often. But incentivizing exploration in a game built to be speedrun is definitely something that adds a whole lot of variety to a game already overflowing with it. And now for the downsides. Namely, yes, there's some bugs. It's early access, it's bound to happen. Most of them are pretty funny. For example, one that I just found out about today is that you can actually climb on the ghosts of certain individuals if their ghost is equipped with a hat. It's goofy, for sure, and the devs already have a patch for it ready, but it's something that can happen, especially for an early access game. There is one issue I've run into a few times that can feel frustrating, where if you hit certain pieces of geometry a specific way, you can just bounce off them backwards. Now, sometimes it's definitely my fault, but other times it doesn't seem like there should be a reason for it. Like, the floor seems level, it's just a change in the texture. I can always reroute around it or even just hit better lines, and it's not a game-ending issue, but it is definitely something I've had issues with here and there. The next issue is the difficulty spikes. Don't get me wrong, I love a challenge, but there were definitely a couple levels here and there that just didn't seem to scale in difficulty very organically. The boss fights do a good job about feeling unique and fair, except for one, and the levels do a pretty good job about teaching you new tech as you advance through the game, except for a couple here and there. And those are the ones that just kind of feel much harder for no apparent reason. Sometimes it's about moving through the level feeling rough, and then it kind of forces you to move slower until you can find a route that works for you, but other times it's actually about the enemies themselves. Overall, it's just something that adds a little bit more problem solving into the game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but whenever you're forced to exit that flow that you've been getting used to for the rest of the game, it can definitely feel jarring. Lastly, and this is entirely the fault of the game still being in development, there are not enough levels. I just want to keep playing the new levels and work my way through the story, but I've hit the wall and just have to wait patiently now. And I hate waiting. But that being said, this is definitely a game I'll be coming back to for a while, and I am greatly looking forward to the full release, where I'll likely make another video covering it and giving it a full review. Currently, the game is on Steam for only $14.99 US, but it's actually going to be on sale until March 4th. If ever I were to recommend an early access game, this would be it. I cannot stress enough how much fun this game is and that you should definitely give it a chance. Even if you're like a lot of my friends who aren't really interested in competing for a top tier time, I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. Anyways, that's all from me today. I really do hope you enjoyed the game, and remember, don't stop moving.